Okay, boys, I have just finished the first Diablo game, and my god, was it glorious. It's so crazy for me to think that this game came out almost 30 years ago at this point. It was released in 1997. That is wild beyond belief, considering the fact that modern day ARPGs still have so much to learn from it. This game was truly revolutionary for its time, and mind you, not many people had PCs back in the day. So it's crazy to see how much love and effort Blizzard poured into this game. And wow, it was just astonishing. It took me 2 days to complete. This game was actually surprisingly long because games back in the day used to be short, as far as I remember. But yeah, no, this game actually took me quite some time to finish. I had to do like 2 full sittings on it for 2 whole days. But man, I had the time of my life. And I think the main point and what most ARPGs can learn from this game today is how much the story mattered. And if you play Diablo 1, you know the story is everything. And you can claim that, yes, back in the day you didn't have any multiplayers and all the technology and all that stuff we have today. So the story was always the main focus, which I would 100% agree with you there. But it doesn't mean that the story needs to be bad. It doesn't mean that the story needs to be bad today. The story can still be good, and you can still have all of these really cool gameplay elements inside of it. And I'm gonna use Path of Exile as a constant example, because this is the only ARPG I consistently play. And also I haven't played PoE 1, so whenever I say PoE or Path of Exile, always know that I'm referring to the second game, not the first, because I haven't played the first. Now, when I say about PoE 2 that it can be way more story focused, I know that right now we have Act 1, 2, 3, and 4. We don't have Act 5 or 6. They're currently missing. They're gonna come in a future update. So, from what I experienced, the acts are great and they're fun, but you don't really get the story. The story is really convoluted and they give it to you in a very bad form where every single NPC just won't shut up and they all tell you like million things and they all tell you the same thing just from their perspective. And I don't think it's necessarily wrong, I just don't like the fact how every single NPC yaps for hours on end. The fact that Diablo 1 had like, I think 5 NPCs total in Tristram, which is the main village, and you come to an NPC and you can ask them about every single quest that you have, and it will give you a quick summary of what this guy think. It will give it to you in a scroll down manner where the text just scrolls over slowly, and of course everything is narrated. The voice acting was sublime, but to be honest, Blizzard always excelled at voice acting. This was always their strongest suit. One of their strongest suit, and it was glorious. This is how I want to experience my lore. Fully immersive. Let me feel like I'm talking to a guy instead of clicking on him and just going through the speech bubbles really quick, because I don't want to hear yapping. I want to hear the meat. I want to see the meat of the thing, not just bones scattered around. I think the Souls-like approach was very fitting for a game, even though it came out, before a Souls-like game, right? But I think the Souls-like approach can definitely benefit Path of Exile way more, and modern-day ARPGs in general, because I want to experience everything. I don't want you to tell me, okay, this guy think this, and this guy think that, and do whatever you want with this information. No, I want to experience it. Show me that what this guy is currently thinking, and I can surmise the rest, right? I can assess in my brain what the rest of the village are thinking about him. I don't need every single NPC comment about everything. Just give me the lore in a very professional manner, and don't give it to me scattered throughout million NPCs and every one of them just yaps for hours, because I'm just gonna get bored and I'm gonna skip through all of it. So Diablo 1 definitely cracked the code there, and it was so great. It was so great. I really wish other ARPGs would do that. And while we're on the topic, we have completely lost the horror vibe of ARPGs. Path of Exile 2, it was always like a horror-themed game, and I feel like we don't feel it at all. I mean, yeah, you see the pools of blood and, the bones and all that stuff, but look at Diablo 1. Dude, the stuff are so graphic that I can't even describe them, otherwise I'm gonna get, like, banned off YouTube. And you can see some of them on the screen. I couldn't even show it to you, like, show some of the stuff to you. I mean, unless it was heavily pixelated, right? And luckily for me, the game is already heavily pixelated because it was made so long ago. So I don't really need to censor anything, I believe. But if you truly focus, you can see this game had gore, and it had a lot. It had some despicable things, honestly. I zoomed in on my screen and I went like, what the hell? Wait, is this what I think it is? And it was. It was crazy. If you go to the butcher room, the butcher is one of the bosses on level 2, I think. One of the earlier bosses. And you look at the inside of his room, you can see some gut-wrenching stuff. I still think that people back in the day looked at that and went like, oh my god, this is too much. Because, you know, that's how people used to be back in the day, right? Nowadays, we're kind of used to way more. But I believe that Path of Exile can pull this off. I think they can pull this much horror, and I think all they need to do is increase the horror element. To increase the horror element, is make the game a tad bit slower, and not the end game. Whenever I talk about PoE, again, I don't mention the endgame. Endgame is endgame. Endgame should be fast, and it's good the way that it is. I'm talking about strictly the story itself, the base game that everyone comes into when they're starting. I think that this should be a little bit slower. I think that it's slower enough to the point where it's very enjoyable. It is kind of slow. But I just think it should be slight bit slower and increase the horror elements of it. To be fair, I do think that Act 1 is genuinely 9 out of 10. I think it's almost there. Almost Diablo level. Just could use a little bit of an upgrade. The rest of the acts, on the other hand, are kind of miss the point on the horror aspects, except maybe for Act 4 at certain zones. But Act 2 and 3 were a complete dud, in my opinion. But Act 1, I think every single act should be like Act 1. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Act 1 was peak geniosity, and it was so goddamn fun. It was so goddamn good. Even the boss at the end, everything, it was like, mwah, like almost perfect. Literally almost perfect. But yeah, I think they should increase the horror vibes. I think we should get all of that stuff done. And that would be phenomenal. Once we get that, I think Path of Exile would be unstoppable. Well, even though it's kind of unstoppable now, but, you know, still. Because it's kind of annoying that we lost these slow, quiet moments where you just get to thread around and be afraid. It feels like monsters lunging at you from every single corner of the game. And if you play Diablo 1, you can see there are a lot of empty hallways with all of these decoration, let's call them like that. And you just soak in the atmosphere, you soak in the vibes, you're fully immersed, and then when you least expect, you get a monster coming at you from nowhere. And monsters are also very, very tough. So in today's ARPGs, people want to slay everything fast. And the good thing about Diablo 1 is that monsters were way more MMORPG-like rather than modern ARPGs. Because you need to fight a monster for ages to take it down. There weren't many monsters, they didn't like have an insane number, but man, were they tough. If you came unprepared to a dungeon, you felt that. But on the other hand, if you came prepared, you could easily like one-shot, two-shot every single monster in the dungeon, and you felt good about that. So it's just a matter of, you know, gearing up and having these quiet moments to kind of advance your immersion. And then just hit you with the ARPG elements. Like, okay, you're powerful, you're not powerful, whatever, right? Whatever suits the current location. But regardless, it was still amazing, and the way they implement that was just incredible. The maps were absolutely fantastic, and I couldn't get more of them. There were so many diverse biomes. I think there were 4 or 5 in total. I haven't played the Beelzebub, by the way. I know the Beelzebub added a little more. I played the Classic. But yeah, I mean, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. Now, I'm not going to ruin the lore for you guys, but, you know, in case you haven't played the game, maybe there are going to be some mild spoilers here. But regardless, last boss was absolutely fantastic. Fighting Diablo, even the way that you go down to the boss was so immersive. You literally go down until you reach hell. So you start at the stairs, right? You go through a church where there's a person dead lying on the ground. He gives you a quest before he takes his final breath. But then you go into a church, and from there you kind of start going down, and you see a lot of undead, a lot of monsters, and eventually you reach hell, which is wild. This was crazy because once you reach hell, you see the coolest monsters ever. You see like demon lords, blood knights, succubus, all of these kind of stuff, like abomination. It was so good, and I feel like Path of Exile have truly cracked the code when it comes to enemy design. I believe the enemy design on PoE is fantastic. But again, if the game was a little bit slower, I could have seen them more clearly, because now you just kind of kill everyone in one hit, and that's pretty much all. But I feel if the game was slower, we could have soaked it in way better. But the creature design is fantastic in PoE, so you can't say otherwise. But man, it was so good. Now, the last possible thing I want to talk about is the scarce amount of loot. Now, Diablo 1 doesn't have a lot of loot, but the loot you have is so surprising. I did not expect to see elements of current day ARPGs in Diablo 1. It was truly revolutionary for its time. You see like light radius, and I think it might be D&D thing, but still, you see light radius, you see plus all stats, you see armor scaling, weapon damage scaling, and all that stuff, and you're like, wow, this is literally what we have today. It is so crazy to think that it was back in the day. I feel like I came in with the knowledge to play this game, even though even though I haven't played it by now. So it's just phenomenal for me to see how good this game was and how advanced it was for the time. But I just wish loot scarcity was a thing. Now, I know that people play solo self-found in Path of Exile, and this is where I kind of think that they need to add certain mechanics to solo self-found. Just like you have trade, you have the market. I think solo self-found players should get some sort of a mechanic to help them with the game. Kind of what like Last Epoch did. Now, I didn't play really Last Epoch that much, so I can't really vouch for that system. But I think Path of Exile should implement something for solo self-found players. As far as I'm aware of, they implemented nothing, but I might be wrong about that. So please correct me if I am wrong. But I think there should be a specific system for solo self-found players to enjoy. And that way you can implement loot scarcity way more evenly across the board. And you can make sure that solo self-found players doesn't suffer because of it too. So that could definitely be great. But overall, man, I love Diablo 1. You should definitely try out this game if you haven't played it. It was worth every single penny. It was on a discount too. It costed me like almost nothing. And it was just a fun game. I really wish modern day ARPG would take notes from it, because there is a reason why this game is the absolute GOAT. And I know a lot of people want me to play Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. I may play Diablo 2, I will not play Diablo 3. I've already purchased Diablo 4. I am going to try it out and see for myself. Because I kind of want to compare this to Path of Exile, because now I'm pretty solid at Path of Exile 2, to a point where I can compare it to other games at least. I'm not good at Path of Exile by any means, but at least I'm at a point where I can start comparing this game to other games. So I do want to try Diablo 4 and see for myself what all the fuss is about. But man, Diablo 1, it's the king, it's the GOAT. I mean, what can I say? It was truly incredible. It was truly incredible. It lacked mechanics, it lacked currency, it lacked every single modern game ARPG lacks, and I enjoyed it to the fullest. What a glorious game it was.